Hello, my name is Wilfred. I was told about the existence of a place where you can share strange or frightening encounters. So I'm going to tell you about a horrible event that happened about 3 years ago. I lived on the second floor of a building in Nancy with my boyfriend. Unfortunately, at that time, me and my boyfriend were no longer getting along very well, and we decided to take a break. He went to stay with his family for a few weeks, and I stayed in Nancy alone. If I want to be honest, I was not really handling it well. I was sleeping very little at night, to the point that night and day were almost reversed for me. One evening, I woke up at around 3 a.m. I had slept in all day. I got up and went to the kitchen to make myself something to eat. I put some tea in the pot, and in the meantime, I went out to smoke a cigarette on my terrace. I wasn't even fully awake yet, and I was thinking deeply about my romantic situation. At some point, though, I realized that someone was out in the street and talking quite loudly. I didn't really pay it much mind. Surely just a passerby who was on the phone. The voice faded until I couldn't hear it anymore. I turned my head back toward the road at some point, only to see the worst thing in my entire life, which continues to scare me to this day. There was a man standing in the street, around 50 years old, with what appeared to be a large knife in his hand. He was completely naked, and he was looking at me with these wild bug eyes. It took me a while to really understand what I was seeing. It seemed so unreal to me that I thought I must be hallucinating. I didn't have time to even react or do anything when he suddenly started yelling at me. He began to scream and insult me and ask what I was doing here. I quickly entered my apartment and closed the door behind me. Even though I lived on the second floor, and the man surely couldn't reach me, I still closed and locked it out of reflex. I remember I had never been so startled in my entire life. I even wondered how I hadn't pissed myself, because it was so strange and scary. As I came more to my senses, I could still hear him outside screaming at me. The door was closed, though, so I couldn't really understand what he was saying. All of a sudden, he stopped screaming. I couldn't hear anything for a short while. Then I began to hear some weird noises, as if he was hitting something. Once again, he began to screech into the air. Needless to say, the situation was very unnerving. At this point, I ran to my room and took my phone to call the police. While I was on the phone with them, I returned to my living room. I could still hear the man screaming outside. Once again, he stopped suddenly, and there was no more sound, except for the sound of one last blow striking. The woman on the phone told me the police were already on their way. One of my neighbors had seemingly called as well. Obviously, he was screaming so loudly that it was waking everyone in the area up. After a few minutes, I saw the flashing lights of police vehicles. Afterwards, I took a few minutes to calm down before going downstairs to see the officers. They were talking with some other neighbors in the hall. When I arrived at the entrance, I saw that the glass door was damaged, and there was blood all over it. It was assumed it was the man's, not a victim's, since no one had reported being injured. From what I understood, he must have struck his knife on the window. The noises which I had heard earlier, which sounded like blows. He had injured himself with his knife while trying to break in. The last sound I heard was him tossing his knife. Apparently, the neighbors on the first floor found it on their terrace. We think the man must have thrown it at them out of anger. Perhaps when I learned all that, I knew that he really wanted to get inside for some reason. He was really focused on me, and nobody knew why. I still don't know why he was so mad at me in particular. I had never seen the man before in my life. I explained my version of events to the police, all while crying. The night was super long. I called a friend right after so he could come pick me up, and I could sleep at his place for a time, at least until my boyfriend came back. I heard a few days later from the neighbor who found the knife tossed at his home. They'd arrested the man a few streets away. Apparently, the man had some serious psychiatric problems. Without going into too much detail, he had escaped the vigilance of his family, who would normally monitor him. He was caught threatening a passerby on another street, and now he's been sent to a psychiatric hospital. Even knowing that, though, me and my boyfriend decided to move to another area as quickly as possible. Even today, I avoid going back to Nancy, and I had nightmares for almost a year. We still don't know why he was so fixated on me in particular. Some advice for people as well. Like Mia before, who didn't see a point in going to a therapist after an experience like this. Just go ahead and try it. Honestly, it helped me a lot. Today, I'm clearly less anxious and paranoid than when this happened 3 years ago. Now, I'm going to tell you a not very funny story that happened to me a few years ago when I was 18. From my point of view now, it seems even more serious than I thought it was at the time. To begin with, my name is Camille, and I lived in the P region at the time. This story happened just after I had completed my bachelor's, and I was particularly free to do whatever I wanted with my free time before moving on to higher education. I had one goal: to find a nice guy to stick around with for a while. My big dream in life was to find a nice guy, marry, and have a family with lots of children. I wanted to do it young as well, to be able to live that life as much as possible. It really motivated me to find someone compatible to seriously settle down with as early as I felt comfortable. I registered on a dating site called Grindr. Now, those of you who are familiar with it may say, "What a mistake. That's an app on which you can only find people who want sex." Well, I didn't really know that at the time. I remember back then, I did a lot of sports and was kind of fit. And apparently, other men liked me quite a bit. Already, I didn't really realize that though. For me, waking up in the morning with a bunch of notifications from this app was normal. I was very naive back then. Maybe a little blind, you might say. I received one message that I remember deciding to reply to. I spoke to this guy for several days. We sent each other photos. It was a crazy match between us that had never happened with me and another guy before. Small detail. I discovered that I was gay at 18 years old, pretty much overnight, without consulting anyone. So meeting a guy so soon after was pretty crazy. After 2 weeks, we decided to meet up in person. He sent me his address. He lived in a beautiful suburban area with very nice individual houses and all that. I went on my way and passed in front of all these beautiful places, each nicer than the other. I told myself deep down that I was kind of embarrassed to be seeing someone so rich. I didn't want to appear as though I was just a gold digger or something. I passed in front of all of the houses. When I arrived in front of the number that indicated the address he had given me, I was surprised to find the place was a ruin. The garden wasn't even a garden. It was more of an equatorial forest that was an invisible house, pretty much hidden amongst all the growing vegetation. I walked around the block a bit, trying to convince myself that this actually was the right place. I sent a message, and the man answered immediately, telling me that he was already there. Out of this forest, a man well into his 50s, and not looking like the photos at all. came to open a rickety gate for me to come inside. I told myself, surely this man must be the father of the person I'm talking to. Surely that guy is inside the house with a big smile. I held out my hand to shake it, but he aggressively kissed it with a smile on his face. Not very reassuring. I was very embarrassed and concerned. Now, the guy told me to follow him through the vegetation, and we arrived at the front door of the house, which was not facing the street, but hidden amongst the side with all the trees and other plants. It was well out of sight from the street view. He opened the door with a loud bang, and I entered behind him. That's where the nightmare really began. The house was almost in complete darkness. The windows were barricaded with boards nailed to them from the inside. There was so much dust that it formed a curtain with the large webs hanging from the ceiling. The floor was rotten, and the walls the same, and above all, the smell was unbearable. It stung my eyes. It stunk so much. Not like the kind of smell you'd find at a public toilet or something. It was the questionable smell of organic things rotting for quite some time. At that moment, 3 cats charged at me, meowing extremely loudly. They were all thin, filthy, and obviously not in good health. All this happened within a matter of seconds. I had just decided to turn around and leave when the man instantly slammed the door behind me. I saw the door had a system of several bolts attached, in addition to the classic lock. The man locked them up extremely quickly. There was a staircase going upstairs, where the only real light was coming from. It was located immediately to the right of this entrance. The guy waved his hand to invite me in further. The downstairs is not quite finished yet, but come on, let's go upstairs. It's renovated up there. I got upstairs, and same thing, everything was disgusting. The only difference is that there was some light. He told me to take the first door on the left, and I'd find a big surprise there. The most incredible thing I'd ever seen happened. I don't know where to start. The window was sealed up and had bars on the outside. There was a mattress on the floor with all these horrible dark brown blankets. And above all, there were shelves on the walls from floor to ceiling with statues of fake Disney characters. This was strangeness beyond what anyone could imagine. I spotted a small chair in the corner of the room, which he forced me to sit on very quietly. From that moment on, I went into survival mode. I smiled big and gave the best attempt at conversation I could for several hours. Beneath the surface, I knew I was in some real trouble. The house was completely barricaded, and even if I was a big, sporty guy, the man in front of me could be armed. How was I to know what he could be hiding? The guy laid down on the mattress and stared at me as we talked, telling me countless times to come join him on the bed. I refused very politely and tried to act innocent, like a guy who understands nothing. After 3 or 4 endless hours, I received a message from my roommate, which had a different ringtone than all the other notifications on my phone. I took this opportunity. Damn, I didn't see the time. I have to go home. I have a party tonight. That's my roommate, and they're expecting me. I grabbed up my things and told the guy I had to leave right now. They might get concerned if I didn't return quickly. I said we could continue to talk to each other on the app, and that in any case, we'd see each other again soon. The guy came with me to the front door. I tried to open it to escape, but I couldn't because the door was not locked with a classic locking system. There were all these weird levers and keypads and multiple deadbolts. I couldn't find a way to unlock it. The man fiddled with all the locks, pressed in the codes, and even scanned his fingertip, then said, wait because he had to get an additional key. It took him 15 minutes to come back. 15 minutes where I wondered if I was going to be blasted by a madman who lived here in the middle of hell. He finally opened the door using 3 separate keys, and I finally saw the outside again. I ran under his arm, which he'd used to open the door. I crossed through the forest, which served as his garden, and jumped the fence right in front of him. I ran and headed home faster than the speed of light. The guy harassed me for months after this meeting with lots of different phone numbers. Only after many months did he finally stop. Over some time thinking about it, I told myself that this guy must not even have been the owner of the house. That house was absolutely not being renovated, and it looked like he might have been squatting there. The smell inside, I've never smelled that smell ever since. Except one time when I stumbled across a decomposing hunter's kill in the forest without realizing it. My brain made an instant connection to the smell of that home back then. And at that moment, I started to panic. The house smelled like corpses. I regret not having been aware of it at the time. I would have called the police straight away, if for nothing else than to check to make sure nothing more serious had happened in that house. No one takes me seriously when I tell this story, so I decided to share it here. The backstory is long, but I swear it's important. A few years ago, I was 17. I just graduated from high school and got my first job at a Christian camp near Yosemite in California over the summer. Mainly, the people I worked with were great, really sweet Christian college kids, the good kinds. There was one guy, though, who I'll call Carl, who quite frankly unsettled me. He was tall, handsome, and charming. He had curly golden brown hair and a smile that could stop your heart. His eyes, though, were completely dead. He would never get those little crinkles in the corner of your eyes when you're smiling. It was like the top half of his face was frozen. There were multiple things I didn't like about Carl right off the bat. His eyes, for one, that dead smile of his. He also never asked for anything. He tried to twist your arm very slowly, tried to manipulate the situation until you felt you almost owed him. Each time, it felt like a part of my brain shut down, like it slammed a door shut. It was a very clear feeling. Something about this guy is not right. Save him some food, but don't walk out into the woods to give it to him, sort of thing. Something was wrong with this guy. I got along with most of the little cliques at the camp. No one really disliked each other as far as I knew. We broke off into groups based on what we liked to do in our free time, or who we spent the most time with. Carl, though, seemed to make friends one-on-one within a clique. By the time he left the group, it was decimated. They were fighting, not speaking, didn't trust each other. That's not a lot of evidence to go off of, but I'm trying to give you the picture of this man, how wrong he was. One day, everyone in camp decided to go to Fresno. We were tired of camp food and wanted some real dinner. You know, maybe see a movie or go bowling. I was the one to get off work last. Now, at camp, we had this sign-out sheet. Being so close to Yosemite, we often went hiking after work. So if we left, we had to put our name down along with where we were going. We also had to write down when we should be expected back. That way, if something happened to us, they would know to start looking right away. I put all my info down on the sheet and headed down to the parking lot. My friends had all divided into their cars. I didn't drive at the time. I jokingly asked if they'd forgotten about me. They told me that Carl had said I was going to ride with him. I looked around, but I didn't see Carl anywhere, even though I had seen his name above mine on the sign-out sheet. All the hair on my body stood on end. In that moment, I was terrified to get in the car with this guy alone. He was just so not right. I really, honestly don't know how else to explain it. My friends were telling me I had nothing to be worried about. It would be fine. I saw Carl walking toward the parking lot, a weird smirk on his face, and everything in me told me not to get in his car. I said that I was tired and wanted to stay in tonight. Carl tried to lay on the charm thick, telling me what a good night it would be with him. I owed him because of God knows what. He flashed that dead smirk again. I refused, and he immediately got angry. He yelled at me that I didn't need to be such an expletive about it. I thought we were friends, the whole lot of it. I still refused. When everyone figured out I would not be persuaded, I hugged one of my friends goodbye, whispering in her ear not to ride with Carl under any circumstance. Once they all left, I walked back to the area with the sign-out sheet to cross my name off, since obviously I would not be going anywhere. When I looked at the sheet, though, and saw where my name was supposed to be, my stomach dropped. My name had already been erased from the sheet. While listening to other stories of this nature, it reminded me of one of my own I had thought long forgotten. I'm a South American woman, but I've been living in the States for about 11 years now. I first moved to Colorado when I was 21, to the small mountain town of Silverthorne. I was recruited by an exchange student program for college students in South America to come to the USA, work, and travel during summer break. Up to that point, I had never seen snow in my entire life, so I was extremely excited to be living in a cold, snowy place for once. I was going to be working at a very popular hotel in the town of Frisco, not too far away from the area I was living in. I lived in a hostel at the time, which had its own creepy stories, but I won't talk about those at the moment. That'll be for a later time. So far, I didn't actually know exactly what kind of job I was supposed to be doing in the hotel. All I knew is that I was supposed to show up there on a certain date and a certain time to talk to the owner. He was a Ukrainian-American guy who was probably in his mid-40s or so. I showed up, introduced myself with the basic English skills I had at the time, and told him I was very excited to get my start working there. He gave me this weird, long stare, as if he was analyzing me. He was a very tall man with extremely... Stay at his place for a while. I was hesitant, but felt that I needed a safer place to stay. So I reluctantly agreed. Little did I know, this decision would lead to a series of terrifying events. Upon arriving at his house, he showed me to a small room in the basement. The room had a single bed, dim lighting, and a musty smell. I felt uneasy, but tried to convince myself that I was overreacting. He assured me that I would be safe there. The first few days were relatively calm, but things took a dark turn soon after. One evening, he insisted that we should have a few drinks together to celebrate the new year. Reluctantly, I agreed, hoping that it would keep him in a good mood. As the night progressed, he became increasingly aggressive, making inappropriate advances and trying to touch me despite my clear discomfort. Terrified, I tried to retreat to my room, but he followed me, blocking the way. He insisted that I stay with him and even locked the door, trapping me inside. Panic set in as I realized the gravity of the situation. I pleaded with him to let me go, but he became more menacing. As the night wore on, I concocted a plan to escape. When he momentarily stepped away to grab more drinks, I seized the opportunity to unlock the door and make a run for it. I sprinted through the house, not daring to look back, and managed to reach the main door. With trembling hands, I fumbled with the locks and finally burst out into the cold night. I ran as fast as my legs could carry me, not stopping until I reached a friend's house. I was traumatized by the experience, unsure of who to trust. The next day, I reported the incident to the local authorities, detailing the harassment and confinement I had endured. The legal process was grueling, but eventually, he was held accountable for his actions. I moved out of the town, seeking a fresh start far away from the haunting memories. The ordeal taught me to be cautious and assertive, always prioritizing my safety. Even now, years later, the scars of that night linger, a constant reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind seemingly friendly faces. Times did he watch me sleep without my knowledge. The uncertainty haunts me to this day. I decided to share these experiences as a cautionary tale, a reminder that darkness can lurk in unexpected places. It's crucial to trust your instincts, be cautious of seemingly generous offers, and prioritize your safety. These encounters have left lasting scars, but they've also strengthened my resolve to be vigilant and assertive in protecting myself. As I continue on my journey, I hope that others can learn from these stories and navigate the world with heightened awareness. The road ahead may be uncertain, but by sharing our experiences and staying vigilant, we can empower ourselves and others to confront the shadows that may cross our paths. The narrative remains open, and the lessons learned echo in the chambers of caution and resilience. More guests at this hotel had this event happen to them without ever knowing. I'm a 22-year-old woman who just moved to a small town in Virginia with my dad in October of 2015. We were having some problems with a leaky shower in the bathroom adjacent to mine. You know, typical new house problems. Of course, we called the plumber to come fix it, and he arrived around 8 o'clock the next morning. While I was getting ready for work, my dad let him in, and apparently went down the street to gas up his car before heading to work himself, leaving the plumber and me alone in the house. My bathroom consists of just the toilet and a vanity, with a door leading into the shared shower room that connects to my dad's bathroom. While I was getting ready in my own bathroom, there was only a single door between the plumber and me. I guess he figured out that I was still in the house due to my hairdryer going off. The next thing I knew, my bedroom door was thrown open, revealing a toothless behemoth of a man, kind of looking like Wario and Waluigi combined into one big plumbing mess. He locked my door behind him and then walked 5 feet towards me, stopping right in front of me. I froze, all while he stared at me for the longest 30 seconds of my life. Eventually, he broke the stare and cracked this wide, toothless grin. He started scanning me all over with his eyes, gazing up and down my body like he was sexually sizing me up. Just then, I heard the front door open. The plumber twirled around on one foot, unlocked my door, and ran out. My dad ran in after him, asking if that guy had really just been in the bathroom with me. After silently nodding, my dad took off to chase after him, but the freak had already driven off by this point. Oh, and he left without fixing our shower either. My dad immediately called the plumbing company and tried to explain what happened to the manager. They proceeded to tell my dad it was our fault the man had entered my bathroom because I didn't lock the door properly. They did end up sending another plumber to fix the shower afterward. My dad told me he only returned to the house because he'd forgotten his wallet. I have no idea what would have happened to me if he hadn't returned in time. You know, it's kind of crazy looking back on it now. When I was 17, I was always in Yahoo chat rooms, always chatting with people I didn't even know in the local Seattle rooms. Well, this one guy and I chatted quite a lot and decided to meet up one day. When he showed up, though, it was obvious the guy had lied about everything. His age, what he looked like, and even admitted he'd lied about having a job. He showed up to the meeting in a bus. We started eating at a restaurant, and I said that it was nice to meet him, but I had to go. As I started to walk away, though, the man followed behind me. I walked over to a burger joint nearby. I didn't live far from there, away from the area, and I didn't want this guy to follow me all the way home. My mom was a flight attendant and was out of town. She had about a week left until her days off from flying, so I really didn't want this guy to know where I lived when I'd be home alone for an entire week. I started telling him I had some appointment to take care of, to try and shake him off from continuing to follow me. He insisted it was okay, and that he would simply go with me for company. Not knowing what else to do, I stopped at a bus stop and waited for the bus to downtown Seattle. He stopped too and jumped on the bus with me. The whole ride, he kept trying to talk to me, asking me all sorts of questions. I would answer with a bare minimum, in between telling some lies. I really didn't want him to know anything about me. At one point, he tried wrapping his arms around me. I leaned away, so he tried putting his hand on my thigh. I told him I really didn't know him well enough for him to touch me. I felt sick to my stomach the whole bus ride, trying to rack my brain on what the hell to do once I got downtown. When I got downtown, I walked over to the building where my best friend's mother worked. Since I knew the layout of the building, I could play it off and lose him, hopefully. I told them I had to use the restroom and asked the woman at the cafe inside if I could use it as well. She agreed. But I knew that there was a service delivery door that led to this hallway, and the hallway led to some back rooms that connected to all the different shops and a service elevator, which would take merchandise to shops on other levels. I exited through the back door into the hallway and left the building out the door next to the docking bay. I took this as my chance to make my way to a bus stop sneakily and go home. I was going to take the express bus and get off at the airport instead of the other bus that took forever. As I made my way to the bus stop, I could see the guy in the cafe still searching for me. I managed to make it onto the bus and never saw the guy again after. However, a few nights later, I was on Yahoo chat again when a person messaged me. I told him I wanted to see a picture to know exactly who I was talking to. He sent me one, and when I saw it, I instantly picked up the phone and called one of my friends. I started talking to him, asking him a question. "Hey, are you on Yahoo chat right now?" "No, why?" "Someone is trying to talk to me, and they gave me a picture of you." When I went back to talking to the guy online, he admitted it was not him and confessed his true identity. He said he felt we had a great connection, but lost me when we went downtown. He professed his obsession for me. I cussed at the guy and